Okay, cool. This video is taking a look a little bit at a Google sheet that I have called Habit Investments. That's just a random name that I come up with, and I'm definitely open to changing it. But what it is I'm trying to come up with ways to build better daily habits. I tried, well, actually, I came up with the game first and then tried to implement habits into it. Basically, you're simulating a economy. So each of these, like two columns, is one like corporation. Let's say. So we have the government here. This is the history of transactions, and this is the total for the government, right? And the bank also has a total. And this is just kind of like quick notes so I can remember what happened with the money, like paid rent, bought food, kind of things, right? So there's all these different corporations, and they're all represented on a map, like a little economy, a little town, right? So we got like the government, a bank, a library, a farm, uh, a police station, and from these snapshots we can see that um, I haven't been playing for very long. It is the 18th. Today is the 18th of February. I started on the 7th. Just now making a video, and I actually started with $25,000 in circulation. Let me explain why that's important. So there's each a corporation. Let me briefly explain what each corporation is and why it's important. So here's the government, of course, for like taxes and like paying police officers, government corporations, and um, managing the population. Then we got banks for like the other people and other corporations can't actually like open accounts or anything like that. The only thing that banks are good for right now is taking out loans and like ownership type stuff. And then these blue corporations, organizations, whatever you want to call them, are blue because they are a source of inflation. So PUPS is a like a gym, right? And it's called PUPS because it used to be just be push-ups, right? So whenever I do push-ups in real life, I get $10 in inflation for this corporation. So here I did a total of 80 push-ups, got 800, right? And I have a few agreements here where like there's different ownerships based, and they own different parts of things, and they get a chunk out of it, right? So like everything's intertwined. Over here is a construction company, a farming company, like a music store, just called piano because I play the piano. I get a certain amount of money based on how much I play piano. Leroy, whatever you want to call it, is for library. It's currently in debt, so I have to figure out logistics of that. GED is just general education department, just education for the hypothetical people that live in this little town. So I have a page for basically all the transaction stuff, and these colors are just like if they made a loan when they need to pay off the loan. And in the beginning, I was just experimenting, but now I have like certain standards of and procedures of how those things go about in terms of like paying things and owning stuff. So here's corporations, and the cool thing is I'm gonna put a link for each corporation for their information. So if we go to Notion, I have a page for each of the corporations. So if we go to an interesting, such as Piano Planet, is a music store, right? And I get all this is just money that comes out of nowhere, kind of thing. I just get $30. Like this is here on A1 is the amount of money in circulation. So I can kind of make sure, of course, I'm doing all the transactions correctly, but also I can get an idea of how much money is in circulation, like inflation wise, because I have to kind of artificially affect the market. But these corporations that are blue just get money out of nowhere. So it's, of course, going to hugely affect inflation. So instead of like how in real life inflation has something to do between the government and banks. Now, I'm not very familiar with financial terms and how inflation works in real life, but the government and banks have a relationship where the government can get more money for these kind of things, just like, you know, print more money kind of thing. And that's how inflation works. Where in this simulation, the government and like national banks have nothing to do with inflation. The only sources of inflation are right now these three companies: how much I read in real life, how much I practice the piano in real life, and how much I do exercises, mainly push-ups right now. But it also affects like how much I run. So these is how much I earn. So I get $30 for each new song that I learn on the piano, and these are the rates for how much time I spent. And then it gets really interesting if I practice for more than an hour, because then it's 300, and then with 5% compound interest for each minute that I play. And then I plug all of this into an AI. Right now I'm just using DeepSeek. I know there's a lot of controversy against DeepSeek in particular, but I don't do anything personal. I just have it. I'm just using it kind of for now until I find the best option. Just like to do calculations, and they can give me ideas because I could tell it everything that I see. Like, oh yeah, I got a corporation. I want to do blah 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 blah. And then I can also use it for like doing quick math for like this thing. If I played hypothetically for 2 hours, I wouldn't get 600. I would get a lot more because of the compound interest. Then we have a construction company, which is a big deal for combating inflation. So with the construction company in the economy, there's no company that like gets these hypothetical materials to build these hypothetical buildings. So we're saying that they're buying these materials from an outside source. And if it's from some outside source, it goes to the void. So this is how much money the construction company is spending on materials. And then they can, you know, build things. And then all the property is owned by the government. And then I got a little map key for trying to color code some stuff. People, this took me a while to figure out how I wanted to get things to work. So the total population of all people is 15. And then each corporation represents one owner. And then in each corporation, only the government and the construction company have an additional employee. And there's three independent people, which are James, just a random person that I made up. Happy, which is just kind of like if I was in the simulation, what would I do? So I'm just kind of like doing what I would do, which is a huge unfair advantage because I know what I do and all these habits are based on myself. So it's a weird kind of loophole. And then, of course, I'm another person that really likes cats, who's also a musician, right? And then we have like a police officer that has to get paid by the government. And these are like non-owners, so people that aren't associated with the company, but are like these private investors. So like your police officers or the public and whatever. So that your other police officers, person working for the government, person working for the construction company are these people. And the government, whenever a new person comes, gives 1,000 to this hypothetical pool because I'm not going to run out. How much money does each individual person need? No, I just need to know how much they have. So like, for example, if the bookstore sells a book, I can kind of like ask the AI or something or roll die to be like, okay, how successful was their sale and what percentage of the mass population bought from it, take from the mass population, also like charge the mass population on food and rent. And so any corporation that sells products to the public this is a big deal for them. And then like all these rules that I'm coming up with, I'm getting saved here. So for the government, how they tax things, owns all property that's not claimed yet. So if we go back to the map, everything that has a color is claimed. And right here, this is a building, but the bank owns all of this. But only right here is a building kind of thing. Like as an investment that in case the price of land goes up, and because of inflation, they own all this for whatever reason, kind of thing. Owns a police station, gives $1,000 grants to the new populations whenever there's a new hypothetical citizen. I'll go to people here and be like, okay, what do they work for? Or do they not work for anyone? Boom, and then go here at $1,000. Tax. So they have a contract with the farming. So basically, Pharma has complete insurance from natural disasters and theft. So if they would be robbed or their crops would be destroyed because of natural disaster, completely covered by the government. 100% don't have to pay for anything. In return, the government gets 2% of all income from pharma, which doesn't seem a lot, but there's not really what it kind of is because the government doesn't really tax much of anything else except for these few other rules. Of course, they have to give $1,000 grants for each new person, paid for the people that work for the government. And then there's a 5% tax from all non-profit inflation companies when the income is more than 400 in one cell. So for example, this 800 push-ups is just straight up inflation, so the government taxes that. But if it's a non-profit that also is affected by inflation, like the GED, which is the school system, but also gets money whenever I study in real life. And right now, I get a little bit of money every time I do Duolingo or Brilliant, just a little bit for like each lesson. So that is a source of inflation, but it's not like a profit like company. They're just there for the education to get schools, and they're just like directly funded by the government. So they don't need to be taxing GED. So yeah, whenever I like play the piano for a long time or read for a long time, and there's more than $400 in the cell, that's when it's going to be taxed. So of course, there's no really a reason to tax the mass population right now because there's only 15 citizens. And then the other source is just kind of the thing to tax the rich for any kind of corporation. Doesn't need to be one of these companies. It could be an investor. It's a 5% tax if they have liquid money over 15% of all money in circulation. So how I figure that out is right here. This is 15% of all money in circulation. So at the time of charging people, if the corporation has more than this much money, they get taxed 5%. So the construction company and pharma would be the only ones at the moment. Sorry. And this is... And the logistical thing that I'm trying to figure out, when this becomes an actual game, like an actual playable game, it will automatically be deducted like daily or weekly or however the rates are for each thing. But for right now, I just kind of do it whenever, but I do it all at the same time. So everyone gets charged for rent, gets charged for food, gets paid, and all the taxes are done all at once. So I'm not like, oh, I'm charging a bunch of taxes at one place. So it is kind of it's usually just like once a real life day I do these charges and all these tax things, just so that the people are getting paid, but also paying for rent at the same time. So we got the people and the market for like hopefully different materials, right? So like a cell of land costs $4.90 to buy from the government. I think of food is $35, apartment rent is $75. And a reminder, this is only getting charged, everything's getting charged at the same time. If you want to build a building, it costs $630 per cell. And the construction company has to pay $495 for those materials. And then when everyone's paying for food and apartment, they get at least $320 labor if they're working for a company, right? And then if you're working for a government company, like a police officer or directly for the government, it's $350. And this is interesting. Beds are worth $20 because I wanted to incorporate somehow, when I make my bed in real life, the game gets benefited. So the construction company actually gets benefited it. I think I'm keeping it. Yeah. So bed inventory is 6. Every time I make my bed in real life, the construction company called Carry Construction gets 2 beds, and then they can cut $20 off their construction cost if they're building something that requires a bed, like a house. And then here I'm gonna keep a bunch of numbers here, like how much the void is taken out of inflation, what the world population is, possible living spaces, like logistically, when do we need to make more apartments? When do people need to start buying houses? And the snapshots are to keep track of how much money was in circulation, how many people were around, and then just kind of a idea of what links I'm adding. So when I'm done playing today, I'll add today's date, how much money is in circulation, which has gone up because I've done a bunch of push-ups and played the piano a bunch. And I'll probably add maybe a few more people. But the most annoying part right now is doing all these charges and remembering all these rules for taxes. So I need to some way incorporate, so probably stop using Google Sheets and actually trying to make it into a game where I can have all these charges work automatically and then only worry about doing increased. Oh, and I want to talk a little bit about how the bank works at the moment. So we go to, so the short-term loans for what anyone is investing for the first time, and the way that they pay is different from when they would like pay for rent. It's by cells. So let's say if I made a rent on cell number 1 on the first row, right? Like right here. Let's say this was a loan. Okay, this was. So then I would have 15 cells after that. I would have to pay 8% back to the bank. And then it can't be more than $2,000. And then a long term, if someone's already made a loan and paid it back, then they get a better rate of 6% interest after 20 cells. So you get a longer time to pay it back and it's less money. And then to make sure the bank doesn't go crazy broke, it can only be 3/4 of what the bank actually has. So you can't like take all of the bank's money. But yeah, that's kind of how the bank works. So that's kind of an overview of the logistics of the beginnings of this potential games. I hope you enjoyed. Have a good one.